Hey, what's up, guys? Okay, so Black Clover Chapter 272 is out, and I'm excited about that because of the fact that not only did we not have to wait 3 weeks for it, but we also got the chapter dropped on Friday officially on the Shonen Jump app instead of Sunday. I don't know why the chapter came out 2 days early. If you guys can tell me in the comment section down below, I would appreciate that. But you know what? Regardless of why it came out early, I am not complaining. I'm just excited that we didn't have to wait 3 weeks for it, like I originally said in my last review. But anyway, getting into the actual chapter, we actually have the chapter starting off with a nice colored cover page, and just have it literally just has Asta and Lieb in this like very static pose, just kind of like smiling, looking at each other, and it has their mom, Lucida, basically just looking down on top of them. And at first glance, this image actually looks very boring. It's not really up to the standards that we usually expect from Tabata's colored cover pages. But you guys got to keep in mind two things. One, Tabata was sick, so he possibly could have drawn this when he actually was sick, and that's actually the reason why it's very static and very boring. And two, when it comes down to the Tabata's colored cover pages, they usually do kind of hint towards what the main topic of the chapter is going to end up being. I mean, not always, not every single colored cover page does that. I mean, perfect example would be chapter 251, where we got a colored cover page of Charmy and her wolf kind of dressed up as a Little Red Riding Hood and a Big Red Wolf. That had nothing to do with that chapter because they don't even show up in that chapter. But when you think back to chapter 200, when we got that colored cover page of Asta, and Patry as kids working together to basically read that storybook, we also got in that same chapter Asta saving Patry from his inner darkness after he got turned into a dark elf, and the three of them basically forming a three-man team in order to go hunt down Zagred. So we actually start the chapter off by checking in with and his training, and this got me excited at first because I thought we were actually going to be spending the entire chapter focusing on him. And I was actually really excited about that because of the fact that even though I'm loving everything that's going on with Asta and Lieb and Noct and finding out more about their connection and, the devil contracts and devil unions and stuff like that, I kind of want to take a break from all that for at least 2 chapters and have 1 chapter each where we're at least checking in with and Noelle for the entire chapter and figuring out exactly what kind of training the two of them are going under. Because right now, I can understand how Asta will get strong enough to defeat Dante and Lucifero when he goes up against them again. But when it comes down to and Noelle, it's a lot harder to figure out how 2 days worth of training could get them strong enough to basically defeat them. Because when it comes down to it, there is a much larger power gap between those 2 characters and their personal opponents for this arc than there is against Asta and Dante. Because right, Asta has already defeated Dante once. Sure, that was with the help of Yami, but he has already done it once, and that was before we actually had a true double union or even a true contract with Lieb. And now that he has a full contract with Lieb, and we can assume by the end of this training he's going to activate his double union form, he has a much better chance of defeating Dante on his own. And when it comes down to him facing off against Lucifero, because obviously by the end of the arc, Lucifero is going to actually come to the human world in the flesh, because of his anti-magic abilities, he still stands a better chance of defeating him than he did prior to getting his double union and fully getting a contract with Lieb. Now with Noelle, by the end of their fight, she actually stood a pretty good chance of defeating Vanica. I mean, sure, she had to be pushed to the absolute limit to do it, but by the end of the fight, she would have landed a very mortal wound on Vanica if Megakula didn't jump in and forcibly activate their double union form. And then, of course, once that was activated, she was completely stomped, didn't stand a chance, but still, prior to that, she stood a very good chance at the end there of defeating Vanica. So now, all she has to do is get enough strength in the next 2 days to defeat that double union form, and she will come out with the victory. It'll be a hard-fought victory, but she will still come out with it. And while it's a little bit harder to believe that in 2 days' time she can get the strength she needs to defeat the double union form, especially since we haven't exactly seen what its full capabilities are just yet, since she is training with the elves and learning a brand new type of magic, it is at least a little bit believable that that brand new type of magic could give her the leap in power she needs in order to stand toe-to-toe with Vanica. But when it comes to he didn't stand even remotely a chance of defeating Zeno. In fact, when showed up at the Golden Dawn headquarters, he struggled against the first opponent that he came up against, which was just one of the Dark Apostles who were much weaker than Zeno. I mean, he had to activate his Spirit Die form in order to defeat that guy. And then once he came across Zeno, he stood no chance of defeating him. And Zeno wasn't even serious during their fight. And that's why I want to see exactly what the two of them are going through with their training, because again, it is at least a little bit believable with Noelle since she's training with the elves, but still I would like to see exactly what kind of training they're going through, and at least a hint at what this ultimate magic is. But when it comes to I want to see exactly what Tabata has planned for him. What kind of power-up is he going to give him in order for to stand toe-to-toe with Zeno? Especially again, since we haven't seen Zeno be anywhere near serious in the fight yet, and we don't know if Zeno actually has a double union form yet. So if he does, that means that he's going to be even stronger than Yuno could ever comprehend. So I want to see exactly what kind of bullshit way could Tabata come up with for for Yuno to basically shorten that power gap in 2 days. Now that being said, in the beginning of the chapter, we actually do get to see a little bit of Yuno's training, and we do get to see that he actually has gotten a little bit stronger without Belle's magic, because as we find out in the chapter, she's basically just staying inside the grimoire until they're ready to fight against Zeno again. I'm assuming, as she said when we last saw her during the captain's meeting, that she's just basically just gathering mana up until she's basically strong enough to defeat him, and that's probably what she's doing in there. And we also find out in this chapter that Yuno actually does have some kind of plan that he wants to use against Zeno that he actually thinks will get him to victory. But even still, I have a hard time believing, because of the fact that Zeno was not being serious during our fight, that any plan or any kind of level of strength that Yuno gets in these next 2 days will be enough for him to get the victory. Now, it was actually really cool to see Langris show up in the beginning of the chapter and offer to help Yuno with his training, because for one, ever since the time skip happened and we found out that Yuno was the new vice captain of the Golden Dawn, I've been wondering what has happened to Langris. Is he kicked out of the Golden Dawn? Is he just off training somewhere? What's going on? And we find out in this chapter that, yeah, he actually was just kind of off training somewhere this entire time. And apparently, according to Yuno, he's gotten a lot stronger than he used to be. And two, I don't know if Yuno and Langris actually have ever interacted before in the manga. I know they have a little bit in the anime, but I don't know if we ever actually seen them interact in the manga before. So it was kind of interesting seeing the two of them kind of like bounce their dialogue off of each other in this chapter. Now, I get the logic behind Yuno actually accepting Langris' offer to help him train, because of the fact that Langris is actually a very powerful spatial mage, and Zeno's devil actually uses spatial magic. But at the same time, we've never actually seen Zeno rely on spatial magic for anything besides transportation. So if he doesn't really rely on it for fighting and he mostly uses his own bone magic to do that, unless we start seeing Zeno use his spatial magic in a more offensive way in future fights, this training isn't really going to result in anything meaningful for Yuno. Now we actually end up cutting back over to Asa's training, and we see that things just aren't going well for him, because as soon as we get there, we see him and Lee basically just lay down on the ground, all being up with Nox standing over them, basically just saying, "You lost again." And we end up finding out from Asa that during the fight, every bit of damage that he took, Lee was also getting. And I'm wondering, is that because of the fact that the two of them have the 50-50 contract? Because I can only imagine that that would be the only reason why they would actually be both taking damage from that fight, even though Asa was the only one actually physically fighting. And we really won't find out more information until we actually get to see Nox fight, because he has the Master Servant contract with all his devils. So if he ends up taking damage and we end up seeing during our fight that his devils take damage as well, then we know that's not just a 50-50 contract that does it, it's all contracts. I mean, we could have already had an answer to this if we got to see Lucifero after the fight with Asta and Dante, but we only got to see Dante take the damage. We didn't get to see anything going on with Lucifero outside that one chapter. So we don't know if he also took damage from their fight or not. But as of right now, basically we know that Asta and Lee were taking damage, and we can assume that it's because of their 50-50 contracts. Now, interestingly enough, we end up seeing Asta and Lee basically snacking on some food that actually heals their wounds and restores their stamina, which we end up finding out is actually made from people from the Diamond Kingdom Resistance. And I'm wondering if any of those people actually have anything to do with Charmy, because we've already seen Charmy be the main kind of like healer or rejuvenator for the team by using her food magic to basically rejuvenate mana and stamina and energy, but we've never actually seen her food actually heal somebody's wounds, which is actually something we see in this chapter happen with the food that Asa and Lee eat. So after seeing that, I'm wondering if the person who actually made this actually has any connection to Charmy, because as of right now, we don't really know that much about Charmy's backstory. All we know is that she's actually half dwarf, but we know nothing else. And a lot of fans for a long time now have wanted to get an arc devoted to finding out more about her backstory, and this actually could be leading into that. Maybe we actually end up finding out that this person from the Diamond King Resistance who made this food for them actually is somehow related to Charmy, maybe being her dad or her mom or something like that. Or at the very least, if this person actually doesn't end up being related to Charmy, we could still see her learn from this person as to how to basically create food that not only regains your stamina and mana, but also heals people. And now I'm guessing because they've been eating this food, that they've pretty much been training non-stop as it regains their energy and heals them. And this is the reason why Asta, when Nox brings it up, had no idea that they've been training for about 2 days now. And I would imagine that if they were actually taking breaks, if they were like actually taking time to like sleep overnight to regain their energy, that Asta would have some idea that, hey, I've been training for 2 days because of the fact that I slept twice. But because of the fact that they actually, I guess, been just training non-stop due to the food, he had no idea. So Now he knows that they are even more on a time crunch because he has still not figured out how to do a double union with Leeb. And it's gotten to the point where Nock pretty much forcibly pushes him to the edge in hopes of activating the double union. So yeah, we get to see Nock be a little bit serious in this moment because he actually activates his monozone, his dark prison hunting ground, which he basically just turns the entire area into pitch black. Asta can't see anything, and then just legions of arms just basically come out and start attacking Asta and Leeb. And it's kind of similar to what he did back when him and Asta first met, and he basically just summoned those giant shadow arms to basically just hold Asta down. Instead of this time, they're just attacking him left and right. And he basically is, the plan is basically to push Asta into a corner and forcibly get him to activate a double union out of desperation. It actually makes sense that Nock will actually come to the idea that this is how he will get Asta to figure out how to do it, because as I said before in previous reviews, when it comes to Asta getting power-ups, it's usually out of him being very desperate in a moment, basically being pushed into a corner and having no other option but to get stronger and surpass his limits in that moment. And this is basically what's going on right now. Nock is forcibly, by trying to kill him in this moment and pushing him back into a corner where he actually has no chance of surviving, he's forcing Asta to figure out on the fly how to activate a double union. And that's seemingly what ends up happening at the end of the chapter. We actually get to see Asta's eye kind of like peering through the darkness, and we can assume that he's activating at least some level of a double union. We don't know if it's going to be his full double union just yet. I don't think it is, but that's seemingly what's going to end up happening at the end of the chapter. Now, we end up finding out in the chapter the reason why Asta has not been able to actually activate a double union, and that's because of the fact that him and Leeb this entire time, despite the fact that the two of them have been working together, they were not on the same wavelength. Now, what I mean by that is that the two of them had the same end goal, get strong enough to defeat Lucifero. But the reasoning for them wanting to get that end goal was completely different. When it comes to Asta, he obviously wants to save Yami. That's the reason why he's getting stronger, so he can actually save his captain. But when it comes to Leeb, he is purely trying to get stronger for revenge. And because of the fact that his sinister motivation doesn't basically gel with Asta's noble motivation, the two of them weren't on the same wavelength. But as the two of them got into a more dire situation with Nock attacking them over and over again, they slowly started getting onto the same wavelength as their thoughts went from, their two separate reasonings to the end reasoning of they want to be able to get strong enough to keep the other one from dying. And once that actually ended up happening, that's when they were able to seemingly activate their double union at the end of the chapter. So it basically comes down to what I mentioned in either one of my previous reviews or one of my chapter spoiler videos, where the two of them, because of the fact that they have such different goals and the fact that the two of them are such different characters, they wouldn't actually be able to achieve a double union this early on. And it wouldn't be until the two of them actually came to understand each other better and actually had a similar motivation that they would be able to achieve it. And that's what we see happen in this chapter. Once the two of them basically got past their original reasonings that were so wildly different and came to the same reasoning and wanted to protect the other person, they were actually able to come together and form their double union. Now all that's left is to find out in next week's chapter what exactly the double union looks like and what kind of powers and new abilities it has. And hopefully, Tabata does not tease us by stepping away from this and actually cutting over to Noelle or Yuno or someone else. But anyway, guys, that's it for the chapter. That's it for the review. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, drop me a like, subscribe to the channel. I would greatly appreciate it. Comment down below your thoughts and theories, and I will catch you guys next time. Peace.